There is so much going on in college football, the transfer portal, NIL, the realignment story that never ends. And in fact, a lot of our growth has come, a lot of it since Texas OU, SEC, USC, UCLA in the Big Ten. And of course, these past couple of weeks, the last 13 months was the Pac-12. But Mountain West, the American Conference, and others are trying to figure out also what's next for them. And I have great respect. Gloria Nevarez joins us, the Mountain West Conference Commissioner, with Paul and David here on 365 Sports. So when I was talking to Kim, who set up the time and the day for us, and thank you so much, Commissioner, for being a part of the show, do you refer to realignment as the 800-pound gorilla?
Or something. It is the thing that has taken up all of our time. And want to thank you for having me today, and apologies for the misschedule last time.
Oh, that's fine. That is fine. So I have a question. With what's going on with the Pac-12, and then you guys, everything's fine right now, although there's always the what else is happening. Are you in a better position right now than even the Pac-12 that was trying to steal a couple of teams from you?
You know, I don't know what better position means anymore, but I certainly feel really good about the Mountain West. We had a board meeting on Monday and went through kind of everything we know about the landscape, tried to sort fact from fiction, and felt really good about the fact that we have a lot of similar mission schools. We have a really good media contract that we're going to market here with in 2 years. And, you know, we have a real good opportunity to earn a berth in the expanded CFP playoffs. So it's a pretty good thing right now.
So how do you approach the remaining Pac-4 schools and what their interest might be and navigating all that as it goes forward and trying to sell yourself to them if that's an option?
Well, first, let me say, I have a lot of ties to the Pac-12. I went to law school at UC Berkeley. I worked at Cal Athletics Department. I've worked in the Pac-12 Conference office. A lot of friends, very close ties with all the schools in the league. And I'm still shattered, frustrated, angry that the Pac-12 could be no longer. I'm still recovering for the UCLA USC news. So, one, I want to, as we talk about what they're going through, just acknowledge that this is a big gut punch for their student athletes, their administrators. And so just, want to give them as much grace and space as necessary, but also be there if they, need a place to land.
We had Dr. Livingstone at Baylor on the Friday of August the 4th when eventually 3 schools from the Pac-12 added to what Colorado's bringing to the conference next year. And it still wasn't official, so she had to kind of dance around a few things, but we all knew it was coming. Who's more aggressive right now, you as a conference or the Pac-12 as a conference or the American Conference trying to figure all this out?
I wouldn't be the one. I wouldn't be the one to ask. Although you did mention President Livingston, she is amazing. I had a chance to work with her on the Constitution Committee and a tremendous leader. A little bit in the same spot in that this is all fluid and ongoing. It's really hard, even for me, alone in my office, to pin down where we're at on any given day, let alone to take a public position. But suffice it to say, I think, we're doing our due diligence and really just trying to keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on.
How much do you, as a league like the Mountain West, have to be on the offensive as much as you can and playing as much defense as you can to make sure that as the wheel kind of continues to spin wildly, that you continue to make sure that people know that, yes, the Mountain West deserves a shot at the playoff. Please don't change the rules again on us. And let's try to get this in some sort of calmness going forward so that we're not always reacting to things in college athletics that most schools can't control at all.
Yeah, and that part that you mentioned about having access to the playoff is a huge priority and a credit to the Mountain West first commissioner, Craig Thompson, who helped push that boulder up the hill to get that expanded playoff and to get that access point for leagues like ours. But, it's interesting. When I took my first commissioner job at the West Coast Conference, the news of the day while I was interviewing was that the Mountain West was courting Gonzaga. And then my very first weekdays on the job at the Mountain West, there's public in the news that San Diego State was being courted by the Pac-12. So, and remember, 25 years ago, the Mountain West was the original disruptor in all this, and it was unheard of. Now, this seems like our everyday, and it's incumbent upon us as commissioner and staff to really continue to think about membership expansion, communicating with our members to see, what are their issues, what are they happy with, what are they dissatisfied with, 100 times more than I think ever in conference work.
Everyone remembers the story about San Diego State, the letters, the back and forth, and you were very emphatic on what the letter meant, and also back and forth. Eventually they stay because, well, they just did not quite yet have an offer. But in the end, do you think you may have saved San Diego State from itself and jumping into a pool without any water?
I don't know that I would go that far at all. But I will say, conference bylaws with regard to exit fees and membership, they're not intended to prevent schools all out from leaving. But they are intended to protect the league when you lose members by giving them appropriate notice, 1 to 2 years notice, and resources in the form of exit fees to help backfill and either right-size negative impacts to your media contract or help buy in new members. So, it's one of those things that I've said publicly, and I've said to all of our schools, I'm never going to mount a campaign to keep you from doing the best for your institution, because that's your first and foremost priority. But, mine is also to protect the league and to make sure that we carry on and survive. And 99% of the time, those goals are aligned.
Do you have an idea of what you'd like to see long-term for college athletics and particularly football so that leagues like the Mountain West and AAC are protected?
And you mentioned it. It's that access point, and I understand leagues are getting really big now, and they're going to need more access than just an AQ. And certainly the achievement and the quality on the field warrants that. But also, in order to have a viable ecosystem across all of FBS football, there has to be a valid access point. We have that now. I certainly understand we're probably going to end up talking about that in the FBS room, but that's something that's very, very important to the Mountain West.
So since you have your law degree at Cal and they're looking to figure out what's happening with them, do you have more of a oomph because you went to Cal than maybe if they called you and asked you if teams from your conference would come to the Pac-12?
If you know anything about Cal, they definitely don't work that way. I wish.
What is the ceiling in your opinion? And this is meant to be positive. What is the ceiling for the Mountain West Conference in your opinion?
What do you mean by ceiling?
Like, how big can this conference get? And if you do expand, anything that comes into your conference, does it have to make sure your revenue stays at least equal or better?
Oh, I see. Like number of teams.
Yes.
So,
the growth.
I mean, obviously, the traditionally thought of ceiling is expanding if you look at the power. But I do think my personal preference for the Mountain West, we're currently at 12. I think, 14, 16 is the sweet spot. I don't know with where we are, kind of media rights, staffing, infrastructure, resources on campus, that bigger than that would be healthy for us. But certainly, we're a little bit now on the smaller end at 12, where previously we would have been thought of as on the heavier end.
We're talking to Gloria Nevarez. She's the commissioner of the Mountain West Conference right here on 365 Sports.
How important is it in the first couple years of the 12-team playoff for a Mountain West team to, not win the thing necessarily, but make some noise, maybe put somebody away limping, as they say, out of that?
Absolutely. And that's what I really like about what March Madness has become. There is a place for a school like Gonzaga and a story like St. Pete's where they come out of nowhere and kick some folks in the shin. Whereas I'm really excited about this expanded playoff because we're looking at a really competitive football season. We have an extremely talented roster of coaches, and those top 6 AQs go to the top conference champions. And that is our goal and expectation this year.
Are you concerned that if they, with the Pac-12, depended on their future, that someone like the SEC or the Big Ten, some of the Autonomy 5 conferences may want to take back one of those at-large berths?
Yeah, that certainly will be a discussion and something we'll be ready to, debate within the CFP room. But again, my standing principle, as long as we have an access point that, we have a legitimate shot at, that's what I'm going to stand behind for the Mountain West.
Isn't that like if all the workouts that started back in early August, and we've talked about this with even schools that were in the Big 12, whatever, you just you want hope, right? You want a chance that you have a belief that you're practicing for an opportunity that you're going to play for a championship.
Absolutely. And if you look at Pro League, all of our other collegiate NCAA championships, they're all structured with some kind of AQ system with a nod to regionality as well as legitimacy of validity of conference play and conference champions.
Do you obviously the 12-team playoff only has a 2-year contract and then it has to be reworked. How is one of the things you kind of have to fight for is make sure you give this more time to see how it works than just 2 years to work the initial bugs out?
Certainly. And, I'm newer to the room, but I do sense that there's generally, how should I say it, an optimism around the new enterprise that is the expanded playoff. I think we've spent a lot of time talking about the opportunity, elevating the whole experience. And so I do think it will continue to be evaluated as any new enterprise of this size would be. But I certainly hope and I don't expect that it would go away.
So with the regionality seemingly going out the window in some ways, even traditional rivalries, whatever, is there any discussion that your conference is having or even other conferences with your conference that at some point the Olympic sports and those teams might be different than actually the conference that football or men's and women's basketball are playing under?
That conversation has really, it was introduced by the Knight Commission and several other folks, kind of sat around in the back burner for a while, certainly has shuffled back up because of current realignment. The Mountain West, interestingly, is very innovative and has a whole laundry list of things we did first, like launch a linear network, football replay, female football official and FBS. And so we're not afraid to be a testing ground in some of that. And certainly after this round of realignment settles down, those are going to be some of the topics that we will seriously consider and start modeling.
How much, in your opinion, especially with your degrees and where they're from and what you've accomplished on your resume, how much does an academic or educational mission statement, how much is that getting blurred right now with everybody going after the almighty dollar?
It's tough to say from a conference perspective because that really, when we are in the middle of our strategic planning process right now for a Mountain West, and, someone referred to it's table stakes for any Division I institution to provide a great student-athlete experience and try to compete for national titles. That's what every mission, value, vision statement says. And I really do believe in my heart, which is why I love working in this industry, that our schools take that very seriously. However, I've worked on big campuses. I know the tension between the resources needed to provide all those things that make the experience great, the support systems, the additional programming and all the event support. It's no small task. And certainly schools are being put in the position to make these decisions, travel costs versus the additional funding that makes sustaining these great programs possible. So I'm not in a position to judge at all, but I certainly understand the conflict.
How important is it I don't know if realignment is ever going to go away, even if there seems to be surges, maybe tidal waves at time. How important is it to try to have some clarity for your conference and your future even before the season starts, or is that an impossible task?
Well, certainly it's important and desired. A lot of this is outside of our control right now because, as you're reading, folks, the Pac-12 schools are trying to figure out what their next step is. Media partners are involved. But, more importantly, I think we owe it to our student athletes to provide the certainty, especially the recruits, folks that are signing letters of intent. These are huge life decisions. And, you thought you signed up for, experience A, and now you might be having experience B. That's pretty tough place to be as a young person coming out of high school.
With the story in the timeline, Gloria, with San Diego State, so that means really nobody can leave unless they pay at least, $34 million if they were to leave anytime soon?
If they did it with only 1 year notice.
With 1 year left.
It's half of that if you give us 2 years notice. And the dollar figure is roughly $33 million, but it's a formula that has to do with our average distribution a year.
So what was that like to have that story in your lap pretty quickly after you had, not that you just took over, but being somewhat new to that position?
Well, it certainly wasn't ideal. And again, I think we landed in a pretty solid place. I've always said the best thing for the Mountain West is that San Diego State is a active member of the league, but if they have to go do something that's better for them and better for their student athletes, certainly understand that. So for me, it's been a great outcome, and doesn't mean that this is our current composition for the next 10 years by any means, because as you said, I don't think conference realignment will be over after this round at all.
Is that one of those things that you find out how good you are at your job pretty early on?
What is good these days?
Yeah. For you, if you're good, it's like it lasts a few hours, and then what other darts and arrows are coming the way of a position? I asked you about the expand.
Yeah. So many of my colleagues have retired, like Craig. We talked about Craig Thompson.
Yep.
Being on that subcommittee who created the expanded playoff, and all 4 of those commissioners retired. Like, what's happening?
What did Craig Thompson give you as the best piece of advice when he was on his way out and you were on your way in?
Well, I tell everyone, he has built an amazing thing. This conference is so well structured, well run. He has been completely gracious with his time. I had him on speed dial my first couple of months, and he's just been great in giving me the context, the story behind the actual story. What happened in the room, the why we are here today. And I mean, the man has so much knowledge and history. It's been really, really a blessing to have him be so helpful in the transition.
How much is the conference trying to do whatever you can with what's happened in Hawaii with the tragedy and disaster?
Isn't it terrible? I mean, the footage coming out of there and the number of folks that didn't make it out is just heartbreaking. We are partnering with the University of Hawaii on some initiatives and some support, but they're definitely taking the lead, and we are working with them.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, they, Hawaii just athletically, football-wise, has had a kind of a rough go of it the last couple of years anyway, not throwing any kind of tragedy on it because, they've got to build a new football stadium, all the things that they have going on. So I can't imagine it's been easy on them to kind of navigate now even this tragedy either.
Absolutely. And I know they have quite a few initiatives using their platforms around sports to help rebuild and provide resources. So a lot of credit goes to them for helping to rally support and the community through athletics and the platforms they have.
I know you got other things to do than do a radio talk show interview with us. I have a couple more questions. I asked you about whether or not if you added 2 or 4 teams, would they have to bring at least equal amount of revenue to the conference and everybody else? If you added 2 or 4 teams, has anybody, a network, said that your television media deal would be better?
Much like many other leagues, our media contracts do have triggers for renegotiation if our membership expands or contracts. So there would be an opportunity to discuss and negotiate, but we'd have to know for sure how many schools we were getting and who they were.
And would that be like a pro rata like the Big 12 had with some of the schools they added?
From my understanding, that's the starting point, but it's all subject to negotiation based on the school, the market, value, all those things.
What are your impressions of what you've seen Brett Yormark do in a short amount of time?
He has really been a shot in the arm as far as adrenaline to, I guess, the industry, the Big 12. I've had an opportunity to sit with him a couple times, and I really gleaned a lot of great thinking. He brings a different perspective. So I've appreciated, being able to pick his brain on occasion and see how he looks at our world.
You're impressive, and we appreciate it for how you've handled the stories that have gone on with the Mountain West Conference, and also how you handled stories that you don't even know are coming, because that's what it is now in college athletics. You turn around and here comes something else. Continued luck to you. Good luck through navigating everything that's going on in college athletics, and we do appreciate your time a lot.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you both.
Mountain West Conference Commissioner Gloria Nevarez on 365 Sports, and a lot of you in the chat room impressed